Hi everybody. In today's video we're going to talk about insight, one of the 5 pillars of mental health and well-being that was identified in a meta-study looking at the last couple decades of research about positive psychology. What leads to happiness and general well-being in life? So this is the second of a 5-part series. I'm going through these pillars, and this was identified by the Center for Healthy Minds, which is a think tank at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. So here's a quick overview. We talked in the last video about awareness, and then insight is number 2, then connection and purpose. And then the final one that I'm going to do my own thing about is authentic spirituality. So here's what they mean by insight. Insight, as they define it, is becoming aware of how our thoughts, emotions, and belief shape our inner experience. In other words, it's like the things that we think, the things that we believe, become like a filter. So it's not just about what happens to us, but it's how we interpret that. And it's the thoughts we have. It's the lens through which we view our experience. There's been a number of quotes about this. The last person I could identify as the originator of the quote was Tony Robbins. Says that it's not the life-shaping events that determine how I feel and act, but rather it's the way I interpret and evaluate these events. And I love this cartoon because it shows that, almost anything we go through, there's different ways we can look at it. It depends on what we want to focus on, how we want to interpret it. And the question then is, how do we understand and interpret and feel about the various things that happen to us? That's going to depend on the beliefs we have, the thoughts that we have. Those things sort of shape our experience. Now, here's the problem. What if the insight that I have, what if the interpretations that I have are just way off? I mean, what if I'm just unhinged from reality? I love the teaching from Byron Katie on this. She has there's a lot of her teaching really boils down to this little sentence where she challenges people: don't believe everything you think. You have an understanding of what another person thinks. You sort of interpret how they view you, or you analyze them and you judge them, or you go through a certain experience, let's say at work, or a certain encounter with someone, and you have an interpretation about that, and that might be way off. So these thoughts that come to us, these interpretations that arise, it's helpful for us to realize that's one way of looking at it. That's one way that I'm thinking about it right now, but maybe it's something else. Maybe there's something else going on. So that's where I feel like there's a great value in us questioning the interpretations that we have, questioning the beliefs that we bring to the various circumstances, the various relationships we have, the various interactions. And it's just analyzing, is this the most accurate representation of what's really going on? Is there another way of looking at it? Is there something that I'm not seeing? Is there something that I'm, maybe my past experience is coloring so much what's going on here now that I'm not really seeing it accurately? So then insight is all about evaluating, being reflective about the interpretations we're giving to other people and events, the beliefs that we hold about ourselves and the people around us and the events around us, and trying as best we can to ensure that those are accurate and helpful. So how do we do that? I want to suggest 3 habits, 3 practices, and these will probably come up again. They came up before, some of them came up before. The first one is meditation, which we talked about in the last video. And probably we'll do a separate video about this, maybe a few videos about this, but the practice of meditation where we are intentionally becoming aware of and focusing our thought in a certain way. And there's a lot of value in doing that. There's a lot of physiological value, but there's also value in training ourselves to be in control of where our mind flips around. In other words, we can't like stop ourselves from thinking, but we can just gently bring our mind back to a certain focus. And we do that in prayer all the time. We do that when we meditate on a scripture passage all the time. We have to keep coming back because our minds will go all over the place. And that can be helpful because it allows us to get a little bit of a distance from the thoughts that just pop up in our head, those automatic thoughts. The second practice is some kind of writing, journaling, reflective writing. Some people struggle to write stuff, and so this might not be helpful for you, but for a lot of people it is, because what happens when we write things, we're forced to have a little more clarity about what's going on. There's more of a structure to it, and so that then allows us to maybe to come to grips with things, to analyze things in a different way that we just sort of tend to just go through life and not really being discerning about. And then finally, kind of moving off of the writing practice, maybe it's helpful to talk to somebody else. Maybe it's helpful to not just write about it, not just, spend time spinning in our own heads, but actually talk about it with somebody else and someone who's got some wisdom. Maybe it's a professional person who's trained in, these kinds of things, but maybe it is also just a wise and compassionate friend. But something that will allow us to sort of separate ourselves from these automatic thoughts and automatic interpretations that might arise from our conditioning, but aren't really accurate about what's really happening right now. So that's insight. Now, I hope that you'll stay with us in this series, and we're going to talk about all of these pillars together. And if you have not done so, I would encourage you to subscribe to this channel. I offer teaching about mental health and spiritual health and how those two things interact together and how one contributes to the other. So I hope you have a good week, and we will see you in our next video.